The story that you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts, featuring characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you. The Payumo Massacre. On September 9, 1995, a group of men entered the Payumo Residence and stabbed to death members of Angelito Payumo's family in the town of Santa Rosa, Laguna, Philippines. The following day, the bodies of Nancy Payumo, 40 years old, her daughters Joanna Rose, 17, and Maria Angela, 15, and son John Anthony, 13 years old, were found lying in the pools of their blood inside their house. Nancy had been blindfolded, gagged, and hogtied. Joanna Rose was gagged, and so was Maria Angela, whose feet were also tied. All had died from multiple stab wounds inflicted upon them earlier that day. Lying with them, unconscious from 3 stab wounds, also tied up, blindfolded, and gagged, was the youngest daughter, Helen Grace, then only 11 years old. She was the only survivor of the Payumo Massacre. The victims are believed to have also been hit in their faces and heads by a wooden rifle replica, usually used in high school military trainings, police said. The father was not in the house when the massacre occurred. He and Nancy have been separated for several months. Almost every family member received 10 stab wounds. Helen Grace, better known as Sweet, received 1 stab wound to her neck, 2 to her side, and 2 more by her foot. She survived against all odds. According to police investigation, the massacre was done by drug addicts whose amorous advances were spurned by a teenage daughter. Robbery as a motive was ruled out since no money, jewelry, or other valuables were missing. Apparently, there was a party that past Friday at the victim's village, and one of the daughters turned down an invitation from an alleged drug addict to dance. Acting on a tip from a confidential informant, the Philippine National Police or PNP brought in Danilo Lapis for questioning on September 16, 1995. On September 18, 1995, while in police custody, Danilo Lapis confessed and named his older brother Francisco Kit Lapis, Edmund Delmo, and Maximo Delmo as other suspects, but retracted his confession on September 25, 1995, claiming that he was tortured by the police into confessing. On the same day, Sweet recovered from coma at the Makati Medical Center and was pronounced fit to answer questions by the investigators. She pointed to 3 teenagers, Jesse Ramos, Alan Cruzada, and Bernabe Ibanez, as the perpetrators who were responsible for the massacre of her family. She was able to pick out their pictures from 38 photos that the investigators showed her. A reinvestigation of the case was ordered, but on January 18, 1996, Sweet retracted her accusation and instead stated that Maximo Delmo, Edmund Delmo, and Francisco Lapis were responsible for the massacre. On February 27, 1996, the review panel dismissed the charges against Ramos, Cruzada, and Ibanez. It ordered the filling of charge sheets for multiple murder and frustrated murder against Maximo, Edmund, Francisco, and Danilo. This is the testimony of Helen Grace Payumo. Early in the morning of September 9, 1995, while 11-year-old Helen Grace Payumo was sleeping inside her room at their house in Panoramaville Subdivision, Dita Santa Rosa, Laguna, she was awakened by some noise in the living room. Her sister Maan, who was sleeping with her, was also awakened. Despite Sweet's protestations, Maan went out of the room when they heard their other sister Joanne screaming. Worried, Sweet also went out a little while after. There she saw their mother Nancy, lying beside the bathroom door, gagged, blindfolded, and hogtied. Standing beside her was suspect Maximo Delmo, whom Sweet knew as Tito Imoy, her father's friend. She also saw Edmund Delmo by the dining table, guarding her Ate Maan, who was lying on the floor. Another man whom she did not recognize. later found to be Francisco Lapis, who was kneeling and tying the hands of her brother John Anthony, who was lying face down near the TV set. Joanne, on the other hand, was lying on the sofa, already blindfolded, gagged, and hogtied. When Francisco saw Sweet, he gagged, hogtied, and blindfolded her with a soft and thin fabric. Then the suspects entered the master's bedroom. When they came out a few minutes later, Sweet, Nancy, Joanne, and Maan were dragged to the same room by Maximo and Francisco. John Anthony was left outside with Edmund. The suspects didn't notice that Sweet's blindfold was loose and slipped while she was being dragged into the room. Although the lights in the room were off, Sweet, through the street lamppost light shining through the window, saw Maximo rummaging through the closets there. It was then when Lapis started stabbing all of them. Nancy was first, then Joanne, and then Maan. Meanwhile, Sweet heard the screams of pain by her kuya John Anthony from outside. When it was her turn, Lapis hit Sweet with a piece of wood on the face and legs. After that, he stabbed her at the left side of her neck, and before removing the knife, he twisted it. Then another thrust was made at the left waistline just above the hip bone. Extreme pain made her lose consciousness thereafter. Early morning of September 9, 1995, the next-door neighbor, Ellen Marges, stated hearing a faint woman's voice coming from the Payumo residence, but did not hear it again. Her daughter, Maai, passed by around 10 a.m. so that she and Sweet could go to school together, but failing to get a response, she went on her way. Ellen and an El Shaddai sister went next door to look for Nancy. When they didn't get any response, they decided to come back later that day at 1:00 p.m. When they went back and still didn't get any response from anyone in the house, they called another neighbor, Connie, who went with them and peered inside the house. She saw the bodies but thought that they were all asleep. They kept on calling out to them, and when nothing happened, they called the Homeowners Association president, Willie Candelario. He asked someone to scale the roof to get inside. Once the front door was open, Connie was able to go in and almost immediately started yelling for help, stating that Nancy was dead. Candelario also entered and he saw the bloodied living room floor. Inside the master's bedroom, he saw Joanne lying on the bed face down. Maan was lying on her right side on the cement floor. Nancy also on the floor at the side of the bed, all gagged, bound, bloodied, and lifeless. Then he saw Sweet seated on the floor, leaning on the wall and the corner of the cabinet. Although bloodied, she was still breathing. Together with Danilo Guevara, they rushed Sweet to the St. James Hospital, about 500 meters away. The suspects all claimed to be fall guys who were framed by the police and prosecutors, and all three were able to provide alibis. They also pointed out that the original testimony by Sweet named other suspects in front of numerous witnesses, but then recanted her previous account after 132 days. The Office of the Solicitor General asked that we consider the psychological effects on the mind of an 11-year-old child. After all, she witnessed her mother and siblings be viciously stabbed in front of her, all the while thinking she could be next. Moreover, Helen Grace was terrified of suspect Maximo Delmo, whom she knew as one of her father's best friends. She was confused and puzzled why her father's friend could commit such a heinous act against her family. She was also afraid that Maximo and his cohorts would get back at her to finish the job. Sweet also stated that she was afraid to tell the truth because Tito Emoy was a good friend of her father and didn't want her father to be implicated in the crime, going on to say that she didn't want her father to get mad at her for stating that his best friend was the one who killed her mother and siblings. Sweet also observed that her father seemed happier that she pointed out the three teenagers instead of the group of her Tito Imoy. The court considered that the initial errors must be viewed in the context of the deeply traumatic experience that Sweet had been subjected to just 5 days earlier, and to focus on her testimony in the open court, since she clearly was not her normal self the first time she made her testimony. Further rigorous and lengthy cross-examination failed to shake her story. 11 justices voted to incarcerate Maximo Delmo, Edmund Delmo, and Francisco Lapis for life. They were also held liable for the frustrated murder of the youngest Payumo child, Helen Grace Sweet Payumo. The Supreme Court acquitted the fourth suspect, Lapis's brother Danilo, due to reasonable doubt, ruling that the prosecutors failed to convince the tribunal of his liability. A Biñan, Laguna Regional Trial Court meted him a life term for being an accomplice in March 1997. The Delmos and Francisco Lapis were ordered to indemnify Helen Grace and her father Angelito, who was out of the house during the attack, of almost 1 million pesos in damages. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took the time to listen to my narration. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am Twisted Mind and please enjoy the rest of your day. Salamat!